Welcome back, dear students, to KTHM e-learning portal. Myself, Shzeen from Department of Botany, KTHM College, Nasik. Today, we are here to discuss the topic of absorption of mineral elements for class MSc Part 2 from the subject of plant physiology. In the last lecture, we had started our discussion with mineral nutrients. We had seen the different classes of mineral nutrients. What is the criteria for determining the essentiality of nutrients? We also studied the different methods of assessment of nutrients, and we discussed the role of different minerals in plant nutrition and plant growth and development. In today's lecture, we will be seeing the mechanism by which plants absorb different minerals, and we will be seeing the factors which affect the availability of nutrients to the plants. So let us start with our discussion today. Firstly, we know that plants, they require different types of minerals throughout their life cycle. These minerals, they are obtained from the soil, and soil, it is the main source of minerals for the plants. These minerals, they are found in the soil solution in the form of different salts. And from these salts, different types of minerals are absorbed by plant roots in ionic form. So soil, it is majorly, or it is a reservoir of different minerals, and different minerals, they are available in the form of salts. They are dissolved in the soil solution, and the plants, they absorb these minerals through the soil solution in ionic form. So we will be seeing first the regions of roots involved in absorption, because roots, they are the major organs responsible for absorption of roots. In front of you, you see a diagram of root depicting different parts of root on the left side and what is their role in absorption on the right hand side. On the topmost region, you can see that the region, it is mostly subrized or lignified, that is, it is deposited with lignin. That region, it absorbs very slow or slow absorption of water. That is the function of that lignified region. Then we have the root hair zone. The root hair zone, it is the most rapid it is involved in most rapid absorption of water. Then we have the zone of elongation or the meristematic zone. This region, it is involved in slow absorption of water, but it is involved in the most rapid absorption of solutes. And we have the embryonic zone and the root cap below, which is relatively impermeable to water and solutes. Now we will see the mechanism of absorption. The salts of different minerals, they are absorbed only in ionic forms through the meristematic zone of the root. So there are two types of absorption which we will be discussing today. The first is passive absorption, and the second one is active absorption. Let us see each of these types one by one. Firstly, we will start with the passive absorption. The absorption of mineral ions in the cells or tissues of plants, which takes place according to the concentration gradient simply by the physical processes like diffusion, and it does not involve any energy, that is known as passive absorption. In passive absorption, we will be seeing two types of, we will be seeing two classes. First is ion exchange theory, and the second one is Donnan Equilibrium. In both these two types, we will be seeing that the minerals, they are absorbed by the plants only through the processes of diffusion, and no energy is required for these processes. Let us see each of these types one by one. Firstly, we will discuss ion exchange theory. In ion exchange theory, the basic principle involved here is that the ions are exchangeable. The exchange of ions, it takes place freely from within the cells and ions present in the outer solution. This ion exchange theory is also of two types, that is direct exchange and indirect exchange. Firstly, we will start with direct exchange. Direct exchange, it is also known as contact theory. Now you can see a diagram on the screen in front of you. What happens in direct exchange, we'll understand it by the help of this diagram. You can see a root here, a root which is shown in the figure, and a proton or hydrogen ion, it is adsorbed on the surface of the root, and we can see clay particles or soil particles on which a potassium ion is adsorbed. What happens is when the root, it comes in close contact with the soil particles, these ions, they can exchange from the outer surfaces of the root and the soil, and thus different types of minerals, they can be made available to the plants. So in this process, you can see that there is no involvement of energy. So this is known as direct exchange or contact theory, where these ions, they can oscillate between the root surface and the soil surface when coming in close contact. The next theory is indirect exchange or carbonic acid theory. This also will help try to understand with the help of this diagram. In this theory, what happens is carbon dioxide is released from the roots during the process of respiration. This carbon dioxide, it can react with water present in soil to form carbonic acid. Now, carbonic acid, you all know, it is a weak acid. So, it will tend to dissociate into its ionic forms, that is protons and bicarbonate ions. You can see that dissociation taking place in the diagram. That ionic form, that is the protons and bicarbonate, they can get exchanged with the potassium ions present in the soil solution, and thus indirectly it can be made available to the roots or to the plants. So this is the indirect exchange or carbonic acid theory. Now next type of passive absorption is that of Donnan equilibrium. We'll try to understand this with the help of the diagram. Now, Donnan equilibrium states that there is accumulation of some extra ions in the cell, which is against the concentration gradient. Now, we are seeing the basic principle here in passive absorption, that the absorption takes place along the concentration gradient. So, how this different or against the concentration gradient takes place, let us try and understand with this diagram. Now, in the diagram given here on the screen, you can see a plant cell, it is placed in an external solution of sodium chloride. You can see that in a glass container, a plant cell is placed and the external solution is that of sodium chloride. Now, in an aqueous medium, that sodium chloride, it will tend to dissociate into its ions. You can see there Na plus ions and Cl minus ion, that is sodium ions and chloride ions. And in the plant cell, inside the plant cell, you can see that potassium and chloride ions are present. So, the movement of ions will take place according to the concentration gradient, and the ions can move inside or outside through the process of passive diffusion. So, some chloride ions will come inside to balance the potassium ions and vice versa. So, this movement will take place until an equilibrium is attained between the two mediums. But there are also some fixed ions. Now you can see some fixed ions there, that is R plus ions. Those are present in the plant cell. Those are fixed ions or indiffusible ions, that is they will not move outside or inside, they are fixed in their position. So to balance these R plus ions, some additional anions or chloride ions will enter the cell. So this accumulation of extra ions, that is only the Donnan's equilibrium. And this theory, this is also a type of passive absorption. So this explains that there is some extra or there is some accumulation of extra ions in the cell because of some fixed ions in the present in the cell or indiffusible ions present in the cell. Now next theory or next type of absorption which we will be seeing now is active absorption. In active absorption, an involvement of energy or the involvement of ATP it can be seen in this type. This mechanism is based on the involvement of ATP. The mineral ions are absorbed by roots against the concentration gradient by using energy, and hence it is known as active absorption. Now, active absorption also, it is explained by two theories. First is the carrier theory, and the second one is cytochrome pump theory. Let us see each of these theories one by one. Firstly, we will see the carrier theory. Now, the carrier theory of solute transport, it was first formulated by Osterhout in 1933. And it is assumed in this theory that a specialized protoplasmic membrane carrier, it is involved in this type of absorption. There are some carriers present in this membrane which are involved in the process of absorption. Let us understand this carrier theory by the help of this diagram. In the diagram on the screen, you can see that an external and internal medium you can see, and how the ions are absorbed. Let us try to understand it. Now, X and Y, which you can see in this diagram, those are the two types of carriers. X is the carrier for cation, that is a positively charged ion, and Y is the carrier which is involved for anions, that is A minus. So what happens is this carrier X, it will uptake the cation, and energy is involved. That is, you can see that ATP is broken down to ADP, that is energy is involved. This ion, it will form an ion carrier complex, that is XK plus. You can see in that diagram, and arrows are depicting the direction. Then this ion carrier complex, it will move across the membrane. For this process also energy is required. Then after the movement, this carrier, it will release the ion towards the internal side. You can see XK plus, it is releasing the K plus ion in the interior side or in the internal side, and for this process also energy is required. After releasing the ion in the internal side, this carrier, it becomes X dash, or the carrier X, it becomes X dash. That X dash, it is the precursor stage of the carrier. So this X dash, it is formed, and when again in the next cycle, when it has to absorb an ion, it will be activated to form X, and the process will continue as it is. Similarly, the same mechanism is shown for anion also. Same process is taking place. We can see a different type of carrier for the anion, that is Y, and same process as for cation, it can be explained here also, that the carrier, it accepts an ion, that is a negatively charged ion. For that, energy is involved. Then it forms an ion carrier complex. This ion carrier complex, it will pass from the outside to inside, or it will move across the membrane. For that also energy is required. Then this carrier, it will release the ion in the internal side, and that carrier, it will be converted into its precursor form. For releasing the ion also, energy is required, and then it is converted into its precursor form, that is Y dash. So same processes takes place for cations and anions respectively. So this is one type of what you call mechanism of active absorption. Next, we are going to see the cytochrome pump theory. This is also one type of active absorption. Now, this theory, it has been evolved by Lundegaard and Bergstrom in 1933. And this theory, it is based, or it is supported by some assumptions. Let us see what are the assumptions which support this theory. Firstly, the absorption of anion, it is independent of absorption of cation. Second theory, the mechanism of cations and anions, they are totally different. Then, an oxygen gradient exists from outer to inner surfaces of membrane in such a way that oxidation occurs at the outer surface and reduction at the inner surface. The next assumption is that a cytochrome system is involved for the uptake of anions, and the cations, they are absorbed by passive diffusion. So these are some of the assumptions which support this theory, this cytochrome pump theory. Now let us understand the mechanism of the cytochrome pump theory with the help of this diagram. In this diagram, you can see on the left hand side is the external medium, and on the right hand side is the internal side. Now near the internal side, some dehydrogenase reaction takes place. Because of that dehydrogenase reaction, electrons and protons are released. So this electrons, it will travel from inside to outside through the cytochrome chain of cytochromes, and it will reduce the terminal cytochrome. The terminal cytochrome, it is reduced by this process. What will happen next? In the external medium, you can see O2 or oxygen is present. External medium, that is the soil. In soil, oxygen is present. So that oxygen, it is accepted by the terminal cytochrome. It gets oxidized. When it gets oxidized, it will release electrons, and then that electron and proton, it will combine together to form a hydrogen ion. You can see that process taking place at the left side of this diagram. That hydrogen and oxygen together will form a water molecule. Now this terminal cytochrome, it was oxidized, as I have told before. When it gets oxidized, it will accept an anion. You can see the anion, that is A minus, that will be accepted by this terminal cytochrome. Now this anion, it will pass from the outside to inside through these chains of cytochrome by the process of continuous oxidation reduction. This cytochrome, you know that it is a ion containing complex, and continuous oxidation reduction takes place in the cytochrome, and the anion, it will pass from the external to internal side through the cytochrome pumps, and afterwards it can be absorbed by the plants. So the transport or the absorption of anion takes place by this cytochrome chains. On the other hand, you can see in the bottom of this figure, M plus cation is present. But this cation, that is not absorbed by the cytochrome pump, but it is absorbed by passive diffusion. So that only we had seen some of the assumptions before, that the absorption of cation and anion, they are completely different and they are independent of each other. So the anions, they travel or they are absorbed by the cytochrome pump, and the cations, they are absorbed by passive diffusion. So these are the theories, or these are some of the mechanisms by which ions are absorbed by the plants. Now we will be seeing some factors affecting availability of nutrients or the availability of these ions to the plants. So what are the factors? Let us see them. Negatively charged soil particles. Then we will be seeing soil pH. Third one is excess minerals. And the fourth one is mycorrhizal associations. Let us see each of these factors one by one, how they affect the availability of nutrients. First factor is negatively charged soil particles. Now soil particles, both organic and inorganic, they predominantly have a negative charges on their surfaces. In inorganic soils, mostly they are crystal lattices of aluminium and silicon. When some ions of lesser charge, they replace these ions. So what happens is that their overall charge, it becomes negative. And because of that negative charge on the soil particles, different cations can be adsorbed on their surfaces. That is, due to the overall negative charge, positively charged ions or positively charged elements, they can be bound on that soil surfaces, and thus it forms a great reservoir of elements for the plants. Because of that negatively charged soil particles, different positively charged elements, it can bound to that surface. You can see that in the diagram on the screen, that because of the negative charge on the soil particles, different types of positively charged ions, it can bound to that soil surface. Thus, it makes these ions available to the plants in a large amount. Now, in case of the negatively charged soil particles which might be required by the plants, for example, carbonates or nitrates, those negatively charged particles, they will be dissolved in the soil solution, and through that soil solution, it will be made available to the plants. So in this way, the negatively charged soil particles, it is very useful for the plant, and it makes the different types of elements or different types of minerals available to the plants. The next factor which affects the availability of nutrients to the plant is soil pH. Now, soil pH, it is a very important factor in determining whether which elements are available for plants. Now, the pH, acidic pH, that is pH from 5.5 to 6.5, it is the most suitable range for the availability of minerals to the plant. In this range of pH, maximum minerals are available to the plants for absorption. You can see that in this diagram, the width of shaded areas, it depicts that how much or how less minerals are available to the plants in a particular pH. Now, why in acidic pH the different mineral elements are available? Let us try and understand that. Now, in case of inorganic soil material, the acidity or this acidic pH, it promotes the weathering of rocks. Now, during this process of weathering of rocks, different types of cations, for example, calcium, magnesium, boron, manganese, they can be made available because it is derived from those rocks. So, in this way, these cations, they are made available to the plant. And in case of organic soil material, carbon dioxide is present, which forms carbonic acid. This carbonic acid, because it is a weak acid, it dissociates into its ionic forms. And more protons are released in this process. So these protons, they can be exchanged by different ions, and those ions, it can be made available to the plant. Also, the organic soil, it is formed as a result of decomposition of dead and decaying plant and animal matter. During this decomposition, different gases, for example, ammonia and hydrogen sulfide, it is released during this decomposition process. These gases, they can also form strong acids. For example, nitric acid and sulfuric acid in the soil solution, thus increasing the acidity of the soil, or it forming an acidic pH medium in the soil solution. Because of this acidity, same way protons are released, and these protons, they can be exchanged by different elements, and thus a maximum amount of elements or maximum elements, they are available in this acidic pH range, that is pH 5.5 to 6.5. Next factor is excess minerals. Now, when excess minerals are present in a soil solution, they limit or they hinder the plant growth and development. So, when excess minerals are formed, that pH is what you call alkaline range, and that hinders the what you call plant growth. And the excess minerals, for example, sodium chloride and sodium sulfate, those are mostly found in that arid soils or alkaline soils. So, this is one factor, that is excess minerals. Next factor is mycorrhizal association. Now, mycorrhizal associations, they are formed between a fungal member and roots of higher plant. And these mycorrhizal associations also help in nutrient absorption. Now, there are different classes of mycorrhiza, but the two main mycorrhiza involved in nutrient absorption, they are the ectotrophic mycorrhiza and the VAM, that is vesicular arbuscular mycorrhiza. Firstly, we will see the ectotrophic mycorrhiza. You can see the diagram of a root here, and outside the root, you can see the ectotrophic mycorrhiza in this figure. This ectotrophic mycorrhiza, they form a net or a network of fungal hyphae, fungal mycelium over the surface of root. They do not penetrate the root cells directly, but they might be present in the intercellular spaces of the different root cells. And these ectotrophic mycorrhiza, they form a fungal sheath around the root hair. Now, what is their role is that they penetrate, they are very fine in nature, they are very fine in their appearance. So, these fine mycorrhiza, the fungal mycelium, they can penetrate deep into the soils where the root hairs cannot penetrate and help in better absorption of nutrients. So, this is the role of ectotrophic mycorrhiza. Now, the second example of mycorrhiza involved here is the VAM fungi or vesicular arbuscular mycorrhiza. This is the diagram here depicting the structure of vesicular arbuscular mycorrhiza. In this figure, you can see this WAM fungi, it does not form a network of mycelium around the root hair, but it penetrates in the root cells and forms some specialized structures. You can see a vesicle there inside the root cell. Those are some of the structures. And it also forms an arbuscule. Arbuscule, it is a highly branched structure. Now, these WAM fungi, how it helps in nutrient availability is that these WAM fungi, they help in better phosphate absorption, or they help the plants to absorb the phosphate ions better. Also, these WAM fungi, they help in the absorption of some trace elements, for example, copper and zinc, in much efficient and much better way. So these are the two types of mycorrhizal associations which helps in better absorption of mineral nutrients. So the student assignment for today is write in brief about the factors affecting the availability of essential nutrients to the plant, and you can submit it on the given mail ID. Now let us see the summary of today's session. In today's session, we saw that how soil, it acts as a reservoir of nutrients. It contains different types of mineral elements or different salts of mineral nutrients, mineral elements, they are present in the soil. These mineral nutrients or these salts, they cannot be absorbed directly by the plants, but they may be made available in the ionic form. And these elements, they are absorbed by the roots. The roots are the chief or major organs involved in mineral absorption. So we saw the regions of different root, and we saw that which region of the root, it is most active in solute transport or in the absorption of nutrients. Then we saw the different mechanisms by which these mineral nutrients can be absorbed. We saw two types of what you call the mechanisms. That is, the first one was passive absorption. This type, it does not involve any energy, and the elements, they are absorbed by passive diffusion. Next type was active absorption, and we saw here that involvement of energy is required for the active mechanism to take place. And then we saw the factors affecting the availability of essential nutrients to the plant. We saw four types of factors here. Firstly, we saw how negatively charged soil particles, they help in the mineral availability. Then we saw the factor that is soil pH, excess minerals, and we saw mycorrhizal associations, how they help in the absorption of minerals to the plant. In the next lecture, we will be seeing how different types of mineral nutrients, they are assimilated in the plant. And we will be seeing three mineral nutrients, that is sulfur, phosphorus, and nitrogen. Thank you, students, for your time, and we will meet next time. Thank you.